So let's have a look at an exam question based around Elizabethan adventurers. This is a 20-mark question, and this question is: in his 1974 school textbook, Tudor and Stuarts, R.J. Unstead stated that Elizabethan adventurers successfully increased English trade in all parts of the world. How far do you agree? So to reach top marks on this question, you had to address this aspect here of English trade reaching all parts of the world. And remember that trade wasn't with all parts of the world, and this could form a part of your clinching argument. Right, so we're successful in some parts of the world, so in East to a certain extent. However, over to America, trade links were not successful. So answers are most likely to show understanding of the second order concepts of causation and consequence, so how adventurers did or did not increase trade, and similarity and difference, looking at diversity as well there, so the diversity of experience across parts of the world. So here's a bit of a plan, a layout to answer your 20-mark question. And to reach top marks, we're looking for an introduction, 4 points that are really well explained using second order concepts, and your overall conclusion, right, your clinching argument. So let's have a look at my plan. Here it is. So my introduction. So I would say that although there is evidence that Elizabethan adventurers attempted to take forward this vision of the British Empire and increase trade, it did help to increase trade eventually, but it's not the case that they were successful in increasing trade in all parts of the world before Elizabeth's death. So that would be my introduction. Okay, this idea that in the short term, a lot of exploration could be classed as a failure in terms of trade, but in the long term, the roots were there to develop the British Empire and to develop a huge trade network across most of the world. So by paragraph 1 then, and I've used the acronym PETAL. So your point, your evidence, your explain is here. This meant that as a result. This is going to help you develop those explanations and bring in those second order concepts. And this link back to the question at the end to make sure you are forming an argument and that your answer is coherent and it's focused. So my first point then is I would say that many of the Elizabethan adventurers failed in their expeditions or met with failure or only a limited success. My evidence for this would be the journeys funded by Walter Raleigh and led by Richard Grenville to North America. So this meant that they may have built up useful knowledge of the continent, but the attempt to establish an English colony at Roanoke, for example, in 1585 failed. So as a result, the expedition almost certainly helped to inform and enable England's first successful colony at Jamestown, Virginia in 1607, but that was 4 years after Elizabeth died. So the expedition failed in the short term. I'll link back to the question. This therefore provides evidence to challenge the statement. As the settlement at Roanoke failed, therefore no trade link could be established. My second point. So my second point will be the adventurers also failed in other areas of the world. So we're looking at similarity, difference across all parts of the world here. So Raleigh had hoped to find gold in Guiana in 1595, but no gold was discovered. Right? He thought the Spanish had found gold in South America, maybe I can as well. So this meant that although Raleigh's journey and experience may have assisted in the continuation of exploration and empire building in the centuries which followed, ultimately it failed. So as a result, there was no immediate trade benefit, but it did set the foundations for further exploration. My link back to the question, Raleigh's journey and experience may have assisted in the continuation of empire building and exploration in the centuries that followed, but there was no immediate trade benefit whilst Elizabeth was alive. My third paragraph, I would look at Ralph Fitch's attempt to set up trade links now, so we're looking at more at the east in terms of trade. So my evidence then, so India, Southeast Asia and China when he sailed to Syria in 1583. So this meant that Fitch and his companions travelled through the Mughal Empire into Burma, and as a result they picked up valuable information about the sea trade with China and the Spice Islands. However, despite this, by 1603, 74% of all imports still came from the Netherlands and the Holy Roman Empire in Spain. So the impact of Fitch's discoveries wouldn't be felt till much later, right? So he was a really important adventurer, but in the short term, wasn't that successful in setting up these trade links, you could argue. My final paragraph in terms of my points I'm going to make, I'm going to look at James Lancaster. So one adventurer who did help to increase trade was James Lancaster. My evidence, well, Elizabeth gave a charter to the East India Company to develop trade in the East. This meant that in 1601, under Lancaster, he established England's first successful trading warehouse in the East on the island of Java in Indonesia. So as a result, English ships could start to bring back lots of spices which were used in preparation of the food in Elizabethan England, right? They were much sought after luxury items to preserve food and to use in your cooking. You could use that to impress your guests. Link back to the question. So this gives evidence to support the statement. So I've provided a balanced argument here. To a certain extent, as English trade was successful here, however, again, it was only in one part of the world, not in all, as suggested in the interpretation. So I've linked back to the question there. I've made my point that I disagree with the statement, and my overall conclusion. So thinking about my clinching argument down here. To conclude, I would therefore argue that there were important steps taken by the adventurers during Elizabeth's reign, but the effect of these in terms of trade would not be felt until afterwards. For example, the East India Company would later go on to open more warehouses on the east coast of India, become the biggest trading company in the world, and rule vast areas of India. So the foundations for global trade were laid by the Elizabethan adventurers, although it cannot be claimed that they were successful in increasing trade in all parts of the world in this period alone. And that would be a clinching argument, and my paragraphs link back to my clinching argument. So it's a sustained argument that I've made all the way through. This idea, foundations were being laid, but actually you can't really say trade was successful in all parts of the world whilst Elizabeth was alive. So I hope that helps you to answer this 20-mark question about trade.